In a galaxy ruled by strength, Matriarch Zal'kor watches humanity's gleaming medical outpost, a symbol of peace masking a sinister ambition. The Vesh'kar, ancient and fierce, prepare a devastating strike to shatter this illusion, and unaware, they're igniting a war with a species hiding a deadly secret. What begins as a clash of ideals spirals into chaos, revealing humanity's true power. Dive into the story to uncover the explosive consequence, and please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating videos to inspire even more amazing content. Matriarch Zal'kor watched the human outpost from the bridge of her cloak ship, her reptilian eyes narrowing as she studied the station in orbit above the planet below. The white hull of the medical station gleamed under the distant sun, its surface unmarred by the scars of war, its promise of peace visible in the universally recognized symbol etched into its corrupt blue and white serpent intertwined around a staff, a symbol of healing, a symbol of trust. Zal'kor snorted derisively. Trust was a weapon as much as any blade, and these humans were wielding it with disturbing skill. The Vesh'kar had seen this before, a peaceful facade to lure in the weak, a subtle influence masked as kindness. The humans had infiltrated the galaxy under the guise of humanitarian aid. Their medical outposts, ostensibly meant to heal and uplift, were a Trojan horse. They were spreading, gaining influence. Species after species, planet after planet. The more the Vesh'kar watched, the more it became apparent that the humans were not interested in simply helping, they were positioning themselves for domination. Quietly, methodically, and with the calm certainty of a species that believed they could afford to wait. Zal'kor's lip curled. Let them wait. The galaxy is not theirs to own. The Vesh'kar had been here long before Earth even made its first tentative steps into the stars. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. They knew better than to fall for the illusion of peace. The Vesh'kar respected strength, and the humans, for all their goodwill, had yet to prove they had it. They thought themselves survivors, but they would soon realize that a galaxy built on power would not yield to kindness alone, not if they didn't know how to fight. Zal'kor turned from the viewport, her tail flicking restlessly behind her. In the cold, dark expanse of space, the quiet hum of the ship was a stark contrast to the sharp, pulsing anger that rose in her chest. The High Council had been discussing the humans' growing influence for months, and she had been tasked with ensuring the Vesh'kar were not caught off guard. When the invitable conflict began, this outpost, compassion, a shining example of everything they stood for, would be the perfect place to make their statement. It was symbolic, a strategic strike that would hit the humans where it hurt the most, their identity. They claimed to be the galaxy's healers, the peaceful diplomats, the ones who would bridge the gaps between species. Zal'kor's thoughts hardened, but the galaxy had seen enough of such grandiose claims to know better. Humanity had begun to believe its own myth. The Vesh'kar would end it. Now, Matriarch, her second-in-command, Vesh'kar, spoke, his voice flat, though the tension was clear in his stance. The fleet is ready. We can make our move at any time. Zal'kor didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied the human station through the viewport once more, her sharp mind calculating the exact moment when the humans would feel the full weight of their arrogance. They had overstepped, and now the Vesh'kar would remind them of who truly controlled this part of the galaxy. Initiate the attack, Zal'kor ordered, her voice cold, her words final. Let the galaxy see what happens when you target the strong. As the Vesh'kar fleet moved toward the station, Zal'kor's eyes narrowed. This would be a message to the humans, a message to the galaxy. Peace would only last so long as the strong permitted it. The outpost in front of her was not a symbol of unity. It was a thorn that needed to be removed, and humanity would learn, as every species before them had learned, that the price of peace was paid in blood. The tension in the Vesh'kar High Council chamber was palpable, an oppressive weight that settled like a storm cloud before the rain. Matriarch Zal'kor stood at the head of the room, her angular frame poised and composed, her sharp eyes scanning the council members seated around the table. The room, bathed in dim red lighting, hummed with quiet anticipation. Her tail flicked irritably beneath her, betraying her calm fade. "We cannot let them continue," Zal'kor's voice rang out, cutting through the murmurs of her fellow council members. "These humans, their so-called medical outposts, they are not innocents. They are spies, parasites, quietly extending their reach under the guise of healing. Every world they touch becomes a step closer to their ultimate goal, domination. And we have allowed it." A low growl escaped from Urda, one of the elder council members, his reptilian eyes glinting with disdain. "We have not allowed them anything. The humans are weak. Their outposts are a distraction, a hollow gesture. They pose no threat." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Their medical technology, yes, impressive, but do not mistake it for strength. They hide behind their kindness like a child hides behind a shield." Zal'kor fixed him with a glare sharp enough to silence him. "Weakness is not in the technology, Urda. It is in their ambitions. Do not mistake their pacifism for power. They are not content with simply aiding the Zal'kor vying their place in the galaxy. Slowly, insidiously, they are spreading. They offer care, but what they really offer is control. And we, the Vesh'kar, who have known nothing but the rule of strength, will not stand idly by as they poison the galaxy with their false promise of peace." The room fell silent, the weight of Zal'kor's words sinking into the minds of the council members. The Vesh'kar had always been the true power in this region of space. Their honor-bound warriors, their vast warships, their ruthless efficient Scythes were the forces that defined the galaxy. And now, a species that had barely begun to stretch its limbs across the stars was pushing against the foundations of the established order. Zal'kor paced slowly, her mind working furiously. "Compassion," she said, her voice now cold, "is the perfect target. The humans are proud of it, their shining example to the galaxy of their altruism. It is their crown jewel. If we destroy it, we strike at the heart of their hypocrisy." Vesh'kar, her second-in-command, a lean and calculating strategist, spoke up. "And if they retaliate, they will," Zal'kor said, her voice unwavering. "But that will only expose them for what they are, a fledgling species, desperate for influence but lacking the resolve to defend themselves. We will show the galaxy that the Vesh'kar are not to be trifled with." The council members exchanged wary glances. A few of them, though uncomfortable, knew Zal'kor was right. The humans' insistence on peace, their insistence on being the galaxy's healers, had begun to rattle the established power structures. The Vesh'kar had to act, or risk being swallowed by Earth's growing presence. "We strike swiftly, decisively," Zal'kor continued. "No warning, no negotiation. This is not a diplomatic issue, it is a matter of survival. If we do not act, we will become irrelevant." A murmur of agreement swept through the room, the cold calculation of the Vesh'kar High Council solidifying into a singular, unified decision. The attack would begin tomorrow, and when it was over, the humans would understand the galaxy was a place of strength, not sentiment, and no one, not even a species that had learned the hell, was exempt from the laws of power. The Vesh'kar fleet emerged from the shadows of hyperspace, their ships sleek and deadly, designed for swift and brutal assaults. There was no time for hesitation, no room for negotiation. Their attack on the human medical outpost, Compassion, had been planned with military precision, every step calculated to ensure a swift victory. Matriarch Zal'kor's voice was cold as she watched from the bridge of her flagship. "Initiate the strike," she ordered, her tone final. The Vesh'kar warships positioned themselves around the human station, their massive plasma cannons locked and ready. Within seconds, the first salvo was fired. A plasma torpedo shot through the blackness of space, its green light streaking toward the outpost. It hit with the force of a thunderclap, the explosion lighting up the darkness of space. The station's communications array, the lifeline to Earth and its medical network, was obliterated in a blinding flash. Inside Compassion, alarms blared, and the entire station shook violently. "Dr. Eliana Cross," the station's director, was thrown against the wall as the station's gravity fluctuated. Her mind raced, instinctively trying to make sense of what was happening. This was no accidental disruption. This was an attack. All hands to emergency stations. Evacuate the patients, she shouted into her communicator. Her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. The outpost corridors were filled with the frantic sounds of medical staff, scrambling to secure the vulnerable patients. They had drilled for emergencies, but nothing had prepared them for this, an intentional assault, a direct strike on a sanctuary meant for peace. The human staff knew they couldn't fight back. They weren't warriors. They were healers, scientists, and doctors. But the Vesh'kar weren't here to negotiate. They had come for something else entirely, to make a statement. Another plasma torpedo hit the station's primary power core, sending it into emergency protocol. The lights flickered and went out, plunging the station into darkness. Gravity failed. People were thrown to the ground. Panic spread like wildfire. Director Cross, a voice crackled over the comms. It was Dr. Mark Hall, a senior physician. The primary generator is down. We've lost power to the med bays. The backup generators won't hold long. Dr. Cross cursed under her breath as she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Get the most critical patients into the evacuation pods. Now. But it wasn't enough. Outside the station, the Vesh'kar were methodically picking off their targets. Zal'kor as ships circled like vultures. Each strike meant to ensure that the station's defense systems remained crippled. Each hit calculated to cause chaos and prevent any chance of escape. The evacuation pods, the station's only hope for survival, were already being targeted. Target the evacuation pods, Zal'kor ordered, her voice devoid of emotion. Ensure no one escapes. On the command deck of Compassion, Dr. Cross could see the enemy ships aligning their weapons. They know exactly what they're doing, she realized, her stomach dropping. They weren't just trying to destroy the station, they were trying to make sure that every single person on board, every patient, every staff member, was trapped. As the first explosion rocked the pod bay, Dr. Cross gritted her teeth, fighting back the flood of panic that threatened to overwhelm her. The evacuation was quickly devolving into chaos. The Vesh'kar weren't here to take prisoners. They were here to send a message, and that message was clear. Humanity's so-called peace was weak. Dr. Cross forced herself to stay calm, to stay focused. We're not going down without a fight, she muttered under her breath. In the station's main atrium, the final siren blared, signaling the start of the emergency evacuation protocols. It was too late. The Vesh'kar had already delivered their first blow, and humanity was about to face a fight they had never prepared for. The chaos aboard Compassion was nothing short of a nightmare. The station's once peaceful halls were now filled with the sounds of desperate shouts, urgent footsteps, and the screams of patients being torn from their beds. As the last of the evacuation pods were launched, the reality of the attack began to set in. Humanity was under siege. Dr. Eliana Cross stood in the command center, staring at the shattered viewport where the stars once glimmered with tranquility. The wreckage of the Vesh'kar ships drifted silently through space, and the station itself was now nothing more than a floating shell. Their attack had been swift, calculated, and brutal. There would be no help from the outside. The communication systems were down, and the closest support was hours away, far too late for those who had already fallen. Director Cross, said Commander Bradshaw, his voice strained as he wiped blood from his forehead. We've lost most of the station. The outer ring is gone. Only a few of the evacuation pods survived. But the Vesh'kar, they know exactly what they're doing. Eliana's fist clenched at her sides, rage boiling beneath her calm exterior. The Vesh'kar had struck at the heart of everything they stood for. This was not just an attack on Compassion, it was an assault on humanity's values. And they had done it with precision, targeting not just the station, but its very soul. The healers, the patients, the promise of peace. A sharp buzzing interrupted her thoughts. The emergency beacon had been triggered, a distress signal now broadcasting into the void. but there was no guarantee it would reach Earth or anyone willing to act. Director, Doctor. Mark Hall's voice cut through the tension. The Vesh'kar didn't just attack the station. They've disabled every single backup protocol we have for communication and navigation. We can't even send a message to Earth. We're completely isolated. Eliana's mind raced. She had always believed in the power of diplomacy and humanity's ability to extend its hand and build alliances through goodwill and peace. But this was something different. The Vesh'kar weren't interested in negotiating. They weren't interested in peace. They wanted war. And humanity had no choice now but to fight back. Across the galaxy, back on Earth, President Adelaide Durrant had already been briefed on the attack. The United Earth Council met in an emergency session deep beneath the surface of Geneva. The images from the wreckage of Compassion had already begun to filter in, chilling in their violence. The station was in ruins. Their medical personnel were dead, and many of their patients still remained stranded in the wreckage. "We cannot let this stand," President Durrant said, her voice a steel edge that cut through the murmurs of the council. "We have always sought peace with the galaxy, but we will not be cowed. Not by the Vesh'kar. Not by anyone." She turned to her military advisor, Admiral Kazuo Tanaka, a hardened veteran with years of combat experience. "Admiral," Durrant continued, "what options do we have? What's our response?" Admiral Tanaka's jaw tightened. "Standard protocols would call for increased defense around our remaining outposts. Diplomatic channels could open with the Vesh'kar, though their actions make that a hollow gesture. If we wait, more attacks will follow. We need to send a message that this is not acceptable." A cold silence filled the room. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, knowing that the weight of the decision ahead would shape the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. "Deploy the Guardians," President Durrant said quietly, her eyes hard. "We'll show them exactly what happens when you attack our healers." The room froze. The Guardians, the most elite, covert military unit humanity had ever created. A group of individuals so dangerous, so deadly, that their existence had been kept hidden from the public for years. "We'll activate Protocol Nemesis," Durrant confirmed. "It's time to remind the galaxy what humanity is capable of when pushed to the edge." Back in the rubble of Compassion, Dr. Cross understood the implications of this decision. The Guardians were coming. Humanity's darkest weapons were about to be unleashed. And the Vesh'kar would learn, too late, that even healers could become warriors when their people were threatened. The stage was set. The galaxy would soon know the price of attacking humanity's healers. In the shadow of Compassion's destruction, humanity's response was swift and brutal. The decision had been made. President Durrant's command had rippled through the chain of command, triggering an activation sequence that hadn't been used in over a decade. The Guardian, humanity's most lethal weapon, its darkest secret, were about to be deployed. Deep within an underground complex on Mars, Commander Alexandra Vulov stood before a row of stasis pods, her face expressionless. The room, dimly lit by the harsh red glow of emergency lights, smelled sterile, like a place that existed outside of time. The cold silence was a stark contrast to the urgency building in her chest. She moved with purpose, her fingers tapping the control panel. The first pod hissed open, releasing a cloud of vapor. Inside lay Colonel Jeremiah Kane, humanity's finest soldier augmented beyond recognition. His dark skin was marked with neural interface scars, etched into his flesh like permanent tattoos. As the pod opened, his eyes snapped open instantly, fully alert, his mind processing the situation before his body even had time to react. "Protocol Nemesis has been activated," Vulov said, her voice unwavering. "The Vesh'kar attacked Compassion. We need you back in the fight." Kane's eyes flickered as he sat up, his enhanced neural networks already downloading the mission parameters. His face, always unreadable, betrayed nothing as he surveyed the room. "Understood," he said flatly, his voice cold, mechanical, as though the years spent in stasis had not dulled the edge of his mind. "How many did we lose?" Vulov's gaze hardened. 173 confirmed dead. The Vesh'kar targeted the evacuation pods. We lost most of them. Kane nodded once, the weight of the information settling into his bones. The message is clear. They want war. The rest of the team began to awaken, their stasis pods hissing open one by one. Each Guardian was a masterpiece of human engineering and brutality. Enhanced speed, strength, and intelligence. Each member of this unit had been chosen for their unique abilities, and together, they formed the most feared special operations unit the galaxy had ever seen. Kane stood up and adjusted the black combat uniform handed to him by a technician. The design was sleek, built for stealth and lethality. His combat enhancements began to hum as neural pathways connected, reactivating dormant systems. Time to remind the galaxy-wide peace isn't the only thing we offer, he said under his breath. His voice laced with a cold fury that sent a chill through the room. Vulov stepped forward, giving her team a sharp nod. We leave in 10 minutes. Targets are the Vesh'kar command centers. We locate and neutralize the perpetrators. Don't leave survivors. A chorus of grim nods echoed through the group as the Guardians began to prepare, each member focusing on their specific role. Major Lydia Reynolds, the infiltration specialist, adjusted her adaptive camouflage armor. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, once Earth's most notorious systems hacker, checks his neural implants, already interfacing with the Vesh'kar network. These weren't soldiers, these were executioners. And the Vesh'kar had made the fatal mistake of underestimating humanity's willingness to protect its own. Within moments, the stealth vessels carrying the Guardians began their descent toward the Vesh'kar-controlled world of Nexus 7. The ship's hull heated up as it entered the atmosphere, the countdown ticking in the back of Kane's mind. His enhanced senses sharpened as the vessel shook under the force of atmospheric entry. The Guardians were ready. A crackling voice came over the comms. Impact in 30 seconds. Kane's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the mission parameters. The drop pods would hit the Vesh'kar outpost in mere moments. Once they touched down, it was game over for the Vesh'kar. No alarms, no time to react, no chance for escape. 5 seconds, Vulov's voice came through the neural link. Kane felt the familiar rush of adrenaline flood his system. This is what we were made for. As the pods hit the surface of Nexus 7, the ground beneath them cracked open with a violent force. The Guardians surged into action, each of them moving with lethal precision. Their mission was simple: locate the command center, extract information, and leave nothing but devastation in their wake. The message was clear. The Vesh'kar had attacked Earth's healers. Now, they would face the angels of death. The drop pods hit the surface of Nexus 7 with a deafening crash. The ground quaked as 12 pods, each containing a Guardian, buried themselves deep into the soil. The impact was violent, yet controlled each Guardian's specialized armor designed to absorb the shock and keep them alive. They were not here to fight fair. They were here to dismantle, to destroy, and to send a message that the Vesh'kar would never forget. Colonel Kane was the first to emerge, his pod bursting open with a pressurized hiss. His enhanced muscles and augmented vision kicked into overdrive. As he stepped onto the barren landscape, the winds were harsh, whipping dust and sand into the air. But Kane barely noticed. His mind was already on the target, the Vesh'kar command center located miles from their drop zone. The mission was clear: neutralize the Vesh'kar High Command, extract vital intel, and leave no survivors. Major Reynolds, status. Kane's voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of finality. Major Lydia Reynolds had already deployed, her form vanishing as her adaptive camouflage engaged. She was invisible, blending into the desert terrain like a shadow. Clear. Moving into position, her voice came through the neural link, a whisper in Kane's ear. Team, move out, Kane ordered. The other Guardians followed suit, each heading toward their individual objectives. The Guardians were not a unit to fight together in traditional formation. They were hunters, each one a specialist in their own right. Their strength lay in their ability to operate independently and decisively, striking from the shadows before the enemy even knew they were there. Lieutenant Marcus Chen was already inside the Vesh'kar communications network. Before the dust had settled, his neural implants interfaced with the local Vesh'kar tech, bypassing firewalls with a precision that made human technology seem like a joke. "I've got access," he reported, his voice steady. "The command center is fully operational, but I've isolated their communications. No reinforcements coming for now." Kane's eyes narrowed. The Vesh'kar were fast, but they were far from invincible. "Keep it that way." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Aria Torres, the Guardian sniper, had already positioned herself on a ridge overlooking the Vesh'kar compound. Her enhanced vision locked onto a group of Vesh'kar soldiers patrolling the perimeter. Without a sound, her sniper rifle hummed to life, a single shot echoing through the silence. The first soldier dropped without a word. The others oblivious to the silent death that had just passed them by. Torres moved swiftly, a shadow among shadows, her next target already in her sights. In the Vesh'kar command center, Commander Zarvik, the Vesh'kar leader, was pacing the room, unaware that his empire was about to collapse. His subordinates were trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding outside, but they were too late. The Guardians were already inside. They were too fast, too precise. And now, the Vesh'kar would learn that their arrogance had a price. Kane's team split into two groups, one heading for the command center and the other neutralizing Vesh'kar forces in the field. By the time Zarvik realized the situation was slipping out of his control, it was too late. The Guardians were already inside the command center, their weapons drawn, their eyes cold with the certainty of their mission. Zarvik barely had time to issue orders before Kane's voice rang out, "Don't move." The Vesh'kar commander turned, his face a mix of confusion and fury. "Who are you? What do you want?" Kane took a step forward, his expression devoid of emotion. "We are humanity's response, and you should have never attacked our healers." In an instant, the Vesh'kar command center was nothing more than a slaughterhouse. The Guardians moved with ruthless efficiency, neutralizing any resistance. By the time the dust settled, the Vesh'kar leadership was dead, their command structure shattered. Kane walked over to the main terminal, his fingers flying across the controls, extracting every piece of information he could find. "Mission complete," he said coldly. "Extraction in 15 minutes." As the Guardians began to regroup, the Vesh'kar were left to wonder, how could they have been so blind? The human healers they had attacked were now the very warriors who had brought their empire to its knees. The Vesh'kar would never forget what had just happened, but by then, it was already too late. The cold silence of the Vesh'kar High Council chamber was shattered by the urgent clang of metal against stone. Matriarch Zal'kor's eyes flicked to the central projection, where the devastation of Nexus 7 was being broadcast in real time. The Vesh'kar had prided themselves on their strategic brilliance, on their ability to strike fast and hard, but what they had just witnessed was far beyond their expectations. The Guardians were not just warriors, they were nightmares made real. Zal'kor's claws dug into the council table, her mind racing. Her warships, her carefully executed assault on the human medical outpost, had been shattered in mere hours. The Guardians had come for them, and they had come with a fury that no one had anticipated. "How could this happen?" she growled, her voice low but thick with venom. "How could they dismantle our forces so quickly?" Her words cut through the hushed murmurs of the other council members. The room, once filled with the quiet confidence of an empire at its peak, was now tainted with fear. They had never imagined a response like this, so swift, so absolute. The Vesh'kar had attacked the medical station, a peaceful symbol. They had expected it to be a swift victory, to remind the galaxy who held the power. Instead, humanity had unleashed its deadliest weapon, a force they couldn't comprehend. "Report," Zal'kor barked, turning toward her chief strategist, Trellex. He was a smaller, more calculating figure among the council, but his reputation for intelligence was unmatched. Trellex, his eyes darting nervously, ran a clawed hand over his forehead. "The Guardians are everywhere, Matriarch. They've hit every command center, every outpost. They move like shadow snow once sees them coming, and before we can react, they're already gone. The communications grid is down. We've lost contact with almost all of our forces. Zal'kor's tail lashed behind her in agitation. She knew that the Guardians were no ordinary military unit, but the scope of their assault was beyond anything she had envisioned. These humans, who had once been dismissed as weak, had proven to be the galaxy's most dangerous threat. They were ruthless, calculating, and, worst of all, united. This was not a simple strike. It was a declaration of war. "We underestimated them," said Vesh'kar, her second in command, his voice barely above a whisper. "Their reputation as healers was a mask. We should have known they wouldn't allow an attack on their own to go unanswered." Zal'kor's eyes flashed with fury. "We knew they would retaliate, but we did not foresee this level of precision. These humans are not just healers. They are killers, and they will stop at nothing until we are destroyed." There was an uncomfortable shift in the room. Even the more hardened members of the High Council were beginning to show cracks in their once imposing resolve. The Vesh'kar had never faced an enemy that could strike at the heart of their power so quickly, so decisively. "Commander Zarvik is dead," Trellex added, his voice cold as he delivered the news, as well as all other high-ranking officials on Nexus 7. "The Guardians have taken them all out without hesitation. The command structure is completely obliterated." Zal'kor's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing as the weight of their failure settled in. "Then what of our remaining fleet?" she demanded. "Where is their backup?" Trellex paused, hesitation creeping into his voice. "There is no backup, Matriarch. The Guardians' operations have cut us off from the entire region. We are isolated." The room fell into stunned silence. The Vesh'kar had once been the pinnacle of military might in this part of the galaxy. Now, they were on the brink of collapse. The Guardians had dismantled their entire network in mere hours, and the Vesh'kar could do nothing but watch as their empire unraveled before them. Zal'kor stood, her towering figure casting a long shadow across the room. "We have no choice now," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "We will have to make a stand. We cannot allow these humans to humiliate us any further." But the damage was done. The galaxy was watching, and the Vesh'kar High Council knew that humanity's message had been received loud and clear. If you strike their healers, you will face their warriors. And now, the Vesh'kar were about to learn the full cost of their mistake. On Earth, the air in the United Earth Council chamber was thick with tension. The walls, lined with holographic displays of the galaxy, now flickered with static. The once gleaming room, a symbol of humanity's diplomatic power, now seemed as though it could barely hold the weight of the decision being made. Every leader in the room had seen the footage. Every image from the destruction of compassion had seared itself into their minds. The medical outpost torn apart by plasma fire. The helpless evacuation pods being picked off by the Vesh'kar fleet. The innocent lives lost in the name of power. President Adelaide Durrant stood at the head of the table, her posture rigid, her gaze unwavering. She had led humanity through years of peaceful expansion, spearheading interspecies collaborations, humanitarian missions, and the promise of diplomacy. But now, after the brutal attack, diplomacy seemed like a distant memory. "Admiral Tanaka," she said, her voice a sharp edge cutting through the murmurs. "What are our options?" Admiral Kazuo Tanaka, a man known for his calculated decisiveness, stood in front of the large display. His face was stern, betraying none of the uncertainty he felt. Standard protocols would suggest a diplomatic response to sanctions, condemnation, perhaps even a defensive posture around our remaining outposts. But we know that the Vesh'kar will only interpret that as weakness. Our options are limited. Tanaka paused, then continued, his voice hardening. They attacked Compassion, our most sacred outpost, the symbol of humanity's commitment to peace. They've crossed a line. No amount of negotiation will undo what's been done. If we wait, we risk further escalation. We have to show them that humanity will not be intimidated. The room fell silent. It was clear now that diplomacy, the foundation of humanity's reputation, would not suffice. The Vesh'kar had deliberately targeted the very heart of humanity's mission, its healing, its compassion, and there could be no forgiveness for that. How do we respond? General Maria Das, a seasoned combat strategist, asked, her voice taut with restrained anger. We have nothing left to lose. Durant's eyes narrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. Deploy the Guardians. A collective intake of breath swept through the room. The Guardians, humanity's darkest secret, had been dormant for over 15 years. They were the ultimate veteran trained, enhanced, and equipped with technology so advanced that even most of Earth's top military officials weren't fully aware of their capabilities. A single mention of the Guardians was enough to send a chill through the room. The mere idea of unleashing them was both a declaration of war and a guarantee of total annihilation. The Guardians? Director Lu Wei of Intelligence asked, his voice betraying a mix of concern and awe. Are we really prepared to go that far? These are the weapons we've kept locked away. Using them would alter the entire course of our relationship with the galaxy. Let them remember, Durant replied, her voice steady, yet tinged with the weight of finality. The Vesh'kar crossed a line. We gave them peace, we gave them our trust, and they attacked us. Now, they will learn that we can do far more than heal. We will remind them why the galaxy once feared humanity. There was a long pause. Then, Admiral Tanaka stepped forward. The Guardians were designed for this purpose. We've trained them for situations like this. If we unleash them, we're sending a message not just to the Vesh'kar, but to every species in the galaxy. Attack our healers, and you will face our warriors. The tension in the room became tangible as Durant's words hung in the air, heavy with consequences. She turned to Director Lu Wei, whose analysis had often guided their policies in the past. I want every system in place. Activation of Protocol Nemesis is final. No hesitation. Lu Wei met her gaze, his face set in grim acceptance. Understood, Madam President. The Guardians will be deployed. Durant turned back to the Council, her resolve hardening. This will not be a negotiation. We will hunt down the Vesh'kar, wherever they are, and we will make them answer for this atrocity. Their attack on compassion our people has sealed their fate. As the Council members nodded in reluctant agreement, the massive holographic screens in the chamber flickered, showing the ghostly images of compassion. Now nothing more than debris and memory. The message had been sent. The galaxy would know that humanity's quest for peace was not born of weakness but of strength. And if provoked, humanity would show its true face. The Guardians would rise, and the Vesh'kar would learn, too late, what happens when you attack humanity's healers. 3 days had passed since the Guardians launched their assault, and the galaxy was still reeling from the fallout. The once proud Vesh'kar command structures lay in ruins, their elite officers dead or captured, their military infrastructure dismantled piece by piece. What remained of the Vesh'kar resistance was scattered, broken, and paralyzed by the brutal efficiency of humanity's retaliation. On Nexus 7, the final phase of the operation was unfolding. The Guardians had completed their primary objectives: total destruction of Vesh'kar military command, retrieval of critical intelligence, and extraction of any survivors. The mission, as always, had been executed with ruthless precision. The only survivors were those who had surrendered or been incapacitated. Their lives spared not out of mercy, but because terror, not death, was the true weapon of the Guardians. Colonel Jeremiah Kane stood on the ruins of the Vesh'kar Command Center, his expression unreadable. He was alone for the moment, overlooking the landscape that was once a proud testament to the Vesh'kar's dominance in the region. But now, it was nothing but shattered concrete, burnt-out vehicles, and smoldering husks of military installations. His enhanced neural interface buzzed softly, a reminder that his mission wasn't over yet. He activated the secure communication channel, his voice calm as he spoke to Commander Vulav. Back on Earth. Status? He asked. We've secured all vital personnel, and the intel we've recovered is already being processed. Vulav replied, her voice steady. The Vesh'kar are in disarray. We've neutralized their command structure. There's nothing left for them to rally around. Kane's eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon. The charred remains of the Vesh'kar military slowly fading into the distance. His mind was already calculating their next move. Despite the mission's success, despite the overwhelming force they had brought down on the Vesh'kar, something about the silence felt off. He had been part of countless operations, but the feeling of an empire on the brink of collapse unsettled him. "What's the situation with Zarvik?" he asked, voice cool as steel. Zarvik, the Vesh'kar leader, had been one of the primary targets. His death was symbolic of victory over their enemies. But Kane knew that in the rubble of this campaign, the true implications were just beginning to unfold. "We've confirmed his death," Vulav replied. "The rest of the high command is gone." But the Vesh'kar are more than just a single leader. They'll regroup. It won't take long before they rebuild. Kane turned away from the wreckage, his fingers flexing as he tried to push the thought from his mind. The destruction of the Vesh'kar command wasn't the end. It was only a message, a statement that humanity's reach, despite its pursuit of peace, could be brutal when necessary. And now the galaxy would learn the price of crossing Earth. "They'll rebuild, but not quickly," Kane said, his voice a low rumble. "Not after this. The Vesh'kar will remember what happens when you attack our healers." "Understood, Colonel," Vulav responded. "Return when you're ready. We'll continue to monitor their movements." Kane hesitated, scanning the horizon once more. He wasn't used to standing still in the aftermath of a mission. But this time, something gnawed at him. The Vesh'kar were formidable, but humanity had proven something far more important in this operation. That they were not just healers, but warriors when provoked. "Levi-ing in 10 minutes, Kane replied, his gaze lingering over the battlefield. "Make sure the extraction teams are ready." He turned and walked toward the waiting extraction pod, his enhanced senses still sharp, his mind racing. The Vesh'kar had attacked compassion, humanity's sacred promise of peace, and had been met with vengeance. The Guardians had done their job, but the consequences were far from over. The galaxy would have to reckon with the fact that Earth, once seen as a peaceful, emerging power, was now something far more dangerous. And there would be no forgetting the lesson: cross humanity's line, and the cost would be paid in blood. The universe would soon understand that humanity had crossed the threshold. From peacekeepers to warriors, no one, not even the mighty Vesh'kar, could ever forget that. The Vesh'kar had learned the hard way. Humanity could be both a healer and a destroyer, a peaceful diplomat and a ruthless avenger. The Guardians had left their mark on the galaxy, and the Vesh'kar were not the only ones who noticed. Humanity had shifted the balance of power in the expanse, and there was no turning back. The news of the Vesh'kar's decimation spread quickly. The remnants of their military were in disarray, their pride shattered. The Guardians had done their job, and Earth had made it clear that its pacifism was not a sign of weakness, but a choice. And when that choice was broken, humanity could unleash the full force of its might. In the high, sunlit chambers of the United Earth Council, President Adelaide Durrant stood at the head of a table filled with advisors and military commanders. The space was vast, lined with holographic maps of the galaxy, yet the room felt smaller today, the weight of what had transpired hanging over them like a heavy cloak. She looked around the table, her eyes cold but resolute. "The Vesh'kar finished," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "But this is not just about them. This is about every species in the galaxy understanding that humanity will not tolerate attacks on its people, on our healers." Admiral Kazuo Tanaka, seated beside her, nodded gravely. The operation had been a success. The Guardians had neutralized the Vesh'kar threat, but the consequences of unleashing them had yet to be fully understood. "The message has been received," he said, his tone measured. "But we cannot assume the galaxy will bend to us. The Vesh'kar were just one faction, and their downfall does not guarantee peace." Durrant met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "It never was about peace. It was about deterrence. We proved that we can defend ourselves when necessary. We showed them what happens when you attack humanity's core values for people. Our commitment to healing, our trust in the universe. The room was silent for a moment as the weight of her words sank in. The attack on compassion had pushed humanity to a point where diplomacy no longer felt like enough. The Guardian shamans trained to be the perfect instruments of war had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity had teeth, and they would not hesitate to use them. General Maria Das, the military strategist, leaned forward, her face set in grim determination. What's next, President? We've made our point, but we can't afford to assume that the galaxy will accept our terms without resistance. There will be those who will see humanity as a threat. Durant's eyes narrowed as she considered the question. There will always be those who resist, but we will show them, through action, that Earth is not a species to be underestimated. We will continue to build our outposts, extend our humanitarian efforts, but we will do so with the understanding that if anyone threatens us again, they will face the same retribution. The Vesh'kar made a mistake by underestimating us. I intend to make sure no one else does. The door to the council chamber opened, and Director Lu Wei of Intelligence stepped in, his expression tight with concern. Madam President, I've just received reports from the outer colonies. Several species, previously neutral or hesitant about our expansion, are now reevaluating their alliances, and, Durant asked, her tone unreadable. We're seeing increased diplomatic overtures, Lu Wei continued, but also some signs of nervousness. The Guardians are the subject of whispered rumors. It seems the galaxy isn't sure what to make of us now. Good, Durant said, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. Let them wonder. Fear is a powerful tool, and right now, humanity holds it in abundance. We'll use it wisely. As the council members exchanged glances, they knew the truth of her words. Humanity had just shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. The message was clear. No longer would they be seen as naive. They were a force to be reckoned with, capable of both peace and destruction. And the galaxy would now have to reckon with the price of crossing them. President Durant turned back to the holographic map of the galaxy, her eyes scanning the stars with a quiet resolve. Let the galaxy know. Humanity comes in peace. But cross us, and you will meet our warriors. The room fell into a hushed silence, the weight of the future pressing on them all. The universe had changed, and humanity had just made its mark. The road ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear: Earth had proven it would no longer be a passive participant in the galaxy's conflicts.